Here's a guy, I think, in a relationship that he's been in for a year with a girlfriend. He had COVID. She cared for him. She has, they've been very close. Their lease is about to be up, and they're thinking about moving in together. And it sort of looks like it might turn into, the serious long-term relationship. They might even have kids together. But he says she's caring and loving. But he says, and here I will quote, she's very leftist and doubles down and fortifies her arguments when presented with grievance studies affair, anything IDW, Peterson, or even Jonathan Haidt. Shuts down and becomes hostile in the wake of any credible evidence. Watches a few videos and somehow finds an entire book about how the IDW are evil neo-right-wingers and considers that to be sufficiently giving it a chance, unbiased research. So basically he's saying, what do I do? Do I need to leave this relationship? He also adds later that they're both people of color, but he's got some white in him, and she's never done it, but he's afraid that if they had kids together, it would actually, this would start getting trotted out in an argument, these sorts of, most fundamental racial differences. So, what to do?
Well, I mean, it seems to me one of two things is very likely going on. One is that this is a very dire indicator of some kind of failure. That there is...
In the relationship or in the human being?
Well, in the person's thinking. Mm-hmm. That to the extent...
The girlfriend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. To the extent that, we've been dismissed as right-wingers, since before IDW was a thing.
Right.
The problem is it doesn't withstand scrutiny of the evidence.
Right.
And so it's one thing for a person to have this mistaken impression. It's another thing for them to retain the mistaken impression when confronted with the ample evidence that, for example, IDW has many left-wingers. In fact, I would argue it's more left-wingers than right-wingers, right? That is relatively easy to demonstrate. And somebody who doesn't change their position in the face of evidence, I mean, there could be other objections, but you should drop that one. And if you don't drop that one, it's because there's something about you that's holding on to it.
Maybe though, then maybe what we could offer is, and without knowing either of these people, maybe it's impossible, but how could he have that conversation? Like, how could he approach such a conversation? It may be that when she comes at him like this, he has the sense of like, I am not allowed to speak. I don't know how to engage this. I'm expected to be silent here because she's making this point that I'm not allowed to object to. Like, what could be done to even just open up the possibility of a two-way channel, as opposed to what sounds like him receiving this and feeling like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Except she's so wonderful in these other regards.
Well, so that was what I was going to say about the other possibility.
Okay.
The other possibility is that this is not a failure of her cognitive model. It's a failure in social space where the cost of admitting that you're listening to IDW stuff in some circles is so high that there are people, and I'm now hearing a lot of these stories of people who know better, but are holding to some position because they don't know where else to go. Mm-hmm. And, in fact, we are now receiving troubling indications that people who have retained their mental clarity are now finding that their social circle is overwhelming them with this woke stuff. And, people who were clear-headed are losing their clear-headedness. Mm-hmm. And so, look, your romantic relationship, your permanent one, is the most important decision you will ever make. And it is important that it be built out of something sound. And what I would say is, if your girlfriend is suffering from fear of what her social group will make of her awareness or openness to hearing IDW or whatever stuff it might be, then you need to create a place in your relationship where you can be honest with each other and it doesn't put her in a bind when she talks to other people. She may not be able to solve her social bind, and she may not be prepared to walk away from people she values who are confused or broken on this issue. So, the ability when you close the door of your house to talk about what's really going on, even if you can't, look, this has happened in every one of these tragic situations. It's the reason that, the Stasi and the Soviets, did so much spying on their own population, is that people very frequently knew what was going on. And even if in public they maintained their discipline in talking about the parties that were oppressing them, in private they spoke about the truth. Mm-hmm. And It seems to me that that is necessary. And so,
You need to have a space where you can converse honestly, where you can't, no matter how much of an introvert and how self-sufficient you are, and I count myself pretty strongly in both of those things. You need to have at least one, and preferably more, but at least one person to whom you can speak totally honestly about what it is that you think might be going on, and not fear reprisal in the outside world as a result.
yeah, not fear being outed in
Yeah.
a social environment. So
Yeah.
if it were me, I'd probably say, look, honey, what you're saying doesn't add up, and I'm concerned that the reason that you would say something that doesn't add up is because this is a very frightening moment and people have gotten really aggressive about this stuff. But let's talk about what really is true, and then talk about the predicament that knowing what's really true puts you in the outside world. I don't know if she can hear that, but if that's what's going on, it's at least a strong possibility that she will register it.